There are four words that stopped every newsroom on Earth yesterday. A sitting president of the United States standing outside the Lincoln Memorial said them to reporters in the afternoon sun. Four words. One big glow. He was talking about Iran, he was talking about what happens if the ceasefire ends, and he was smiling when he said it. Is that a nuclear threat? Is it a negotiating tactic? Is it the language of a man who has thought carefully about what those words mean, or one who has not? That question matters more than anything else being discussed right now, and that is what we are going to examine today. Before we continue for things, subscribe to Respect Be not because I ask you to, but because when the President of the United States says something that the entire world stops to interpret, you need a source that examines the words carefully, not just reacts to them. The bell ensures you hear it first. Share this video with one person, someone who heard one big glow and either dismissed it or panicked. Give it a like. And leave a comment. Tell me where in the world you are watching from, your city, your country. Now let us examine what actually happened. It was Thursday afternoon, May 7th. Trump was outside the Lincoln Memorial, watching workers paint the reflecting pool basin. Reporters gathered. Someone asked about the ceasefire, about Iran, about the deal that has been promised and delayed and promised again for 70 days. Trump told reporters, "You won't have to know if there's no ceasefire, you'll just have to look at one big glow coming out of Iran." He then added, and I want you to hear this part too, they'd better sign the agreement fast. If they don't sign, they're going to have a lot of pain. For words, one big glow. I want to be precise about what those words mean because precision is everything. Here, a glow coming out of Iran after a ceasefire ends. To many people who heard that the image was immediate and specific. A nuclear detonation produces a glow, a flash, a light visible from space. The United States is the only country in history to have used nuclear weapons in war. It used them on Japan in 1945. The images of that glow have been part of the human imagination ever since. To many observers, this sounded like a threat to carry out a nuclear holocaust, though it could also be a reference to Trump's previous threats to attack civilian energy infrastructure, which would still constitute a war crime under international law. Let me lay out both interpretations honestly, because both deserve to be examined. The first interpretation, nuclear threat, would make this the most alarming statement by an American president since the Cuban Missile Crisis. The United States has a policy of calculated ambiguity on nuclear weapons, meaning it never confirms or denies whether it would use them in a specific scenario. Trump, by this interpretation, just ended that ambiguity loudly in the afternoon sun in front of reporters, while smiling. The second interpretation, conventional threat, is that glow refers to the kind of massive conventional bombing campaign that leveled Iranian military infrastructure in February, the B-2 bombers, the Tomahawks, the fires visible from satellite imagery over Tehran that also glows. Kelly Bocar-Vlahos, editor-in-chief of Responsible Statecraft, noted that if it were indeed a nuclear threat, it would be deeply ironic since the stated purpose of this entire war is to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Let that land for a second. America went to war to stop Iran from building a nuclear bomb, and the president just threatened to use one. That irony is not a rhetorical observation, it is a structural collapse of the stated logic of this entire conflict, and it deserves to be named plainly. But here is what nobody is examining carefully enough about these four words, and that is where this gets truly alarming. One big glow did not arrive without context. When negotiations have faltered in recent weeks, Trump has on multiple occasions defaulted to what observers describe as genocidal threats, including that the whole civilization of Iran would die and that the whole country would be blown up. This is a pattern, not a single moment. A pattern. Each time the diplomatic track stalls, each time Iran misses a deadline, or fires on a U.S. ship, or buries another tunnel entrance at a nuclear site, Trump reaches for language that is designed to produce maximum psychological shock. I want to be direct about something. This is also a negotiating tactic. Trump used it in his first term. He called Kim Jong-un Rocket Man. He threatened North Korea with fire and fury, the likes of which the world has never seen. He produced a summit. He produced photographs. He produced a handshake. He did not produce denuclearization. The question is whether the same tactic, maximum verbal aggression followed by a face-saving, deal works against Iran, and the answer so far is that it has produced the opposite effect. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said his country will never bow to pressure. He posted, "Every time a diplomatic solution is on the table, the U.S. opts for a reckless military adventure. Whatever the causes, the outcome is the same. Iranians never bow to pressure and diplomacy is always the victim." Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson called it a grotesque absurdity for the U.S. to claim to seek peace while proposing a solution of one big blow. Grotesque absurdity. Those are strong words from a government that is simultaneously reviewing a peace proposal. Here is what I find most significant about Iran's response. They did not go silent. They did not withdraw from the talks. They responded loudly, publicly, contemptuously, and then, according to Pakistani mediators, continued, reviewing the American proposal. That tells us something specific about where Iran actually is. A government that had decided to reject the deal would have rejected it. A government that had decided to accept the deal would have accepted it. A government that responds to a nuclear threat with public contempt and private continued review is a government that is still calculating while 3 U.S. Navy destroyers were fired upon in the Strait of Hormuz yesterday. U.S. Central Command said 3 U.S. Navy destroyers were crossing the Strait of Hormuz when they came under fire from Iranian missiles and drones. The U.S. launched what it called self-defense strikes in response, 3 destroyers, missiles, and drones in the Strait. Trump's response was remarkable for what it revealed about the tightrope. Both sides are walking, Trump said. They trifled with us today. We blew them away. They trifle. They call that a trifle. He called it a love tap. He said the ceasefire was still in effect. Rubio told reporters, the red line is clear. They threaten Americans. They're going to get blown up. If you fire at a U.S. Navy ship, what are we supposed to do? Of course we fired back on them. They were shooting at us. Only stupid countries don't shoot back when you're shot at, and we're not a stupid country. I want to pause here and name something specific. 3 American destroyers, real ships, real sailors, American men and women in a narrow waterway being fired upon by missiles and drones. This is not an abstraction. This is not a diplomatic cable. This is your Navy under fire. In the same week, the president is calling the war essentially over. Iran called the attacks a violation of the ceasefire, saying its strikes on US ships were in response to American bombings of Iranian military sites. Both sides fired. Both sides called the other the aggressor. Both sides insisted the ceasefire technically remains in effect. This is the logic of a conflict that neither side knows how to end and neither side is willing to let escalate fully. Both are trapped. Iran cannot afford resumed full-scale bombing. America cannot afford the political cost of restarting a war its own public opposes by nearly 70%. So they exchange fire, call it love taps and ceasefire violations, and wait for the other side to blink while the deal sits unsigned in Tehran. I want to step back from the military calculations for a moment and talk about something that is being entirely lost in the noise. Words have costs. Presidential words have enormous costs, and the cost of one big blow is already being paid not in Tehran, but in Washington, in Brussels, in Tokyo, in every capital that woke up Friday morning and had to brief its head of government on whether the President of the United States just threatened nuclear war. The National Iranian-American Council said the phrase raises urgent questions about whether the President is fit to make consequential decisions that impact countless lives. They asked, would the chain of command refuse unlawful orders to make Iran glow, killing millions of people? That question, would the chain of command refuse, is not a fringe question. It is the question that military lawyers, nuclear policy experts, and allied governments are asking right now, because here is what the use of nuclear weapons against Iran would actually mean. Iran has a population of 85 million people, the overwhelming majority of them did not design the nuclear program, did not close the Strait of Hormuz, did not fire missiles at US destroyers. They are farmers and teachers and doctors and engineers and children. A nuclear detonation does not distinguish between a Revolutionary Guard missile battery and a school. I am not saying Trump intends to use nuclear weapons. I do not believe he does. I believe this is language chosen for shock value, the same instinct that produced fire and fury and whole civilization will die. But I want to be honest about what happens when a president normalizes this language. It narrows the space for diplomacy. Every time Tehran hears glow, every time the Iranian public hears their country described as something to be incinerated, the moderates inside the Iranian system who might push for a deal lose ground to the hardliners who say, you cannot negotiate with a government that speaks this way about your people. A UBS global chief economist told CNN this week that people in developed economies are cutting their savings to maintain living standards as higher costs linked to the Iran war are pushed directly onto households. Companies are effectively passing costs on to the end consumer, he said. Consumers in developed markets have been digging into their savings rate, cutting back how much money they save every month in order to afford the higher prices. Your savings being cut because of a war that produces phrases like one big glow and then insists the ceasefire is still holding. Consumer sentiment in the United States hit a record low this month, not because of a recession, not because of unemployment, because of a strait that is closed and a war that nobody can end and a president who stands outside a monument to Abraham Lincoln and tells reporters that Iran will glow. Lincoln, who spent for years trying to preserve a nation through a war he never wanted, said this, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first for sharpening the axe." There has been no axe sharpening in this conflict. There have been bombs and ceasefires and love taps and one big glows. There has been no strategy that anyone, including Trump's own allies in Germany and the Republican Senate, has been willing to defend. In public, the deal is still unsigned, the response is still coming, the Beijing deadline is 6 days away, and somewhere in the Strait of Hormuz 3 American destroyers are still sailing. There are 4 words that stopped every newsroom on Earth yesterday. I have spent the last 10 or 11 minutes trying to tell you exactly what they mean, and I want to be honest with you about the conclusion I have reached. I do not know if they mean nuclear war. I do not believe they do. I believe they are the language of a man who has discovered that maximum shock produces maximum attention and has not yet fully reckoned with the cost of that discovery. But here is what I know with certainty. Words like these have never made Iran more likely to sign a deal. They have made Iran more likely to dig in and the tunnels deeper. The ceasefire holds. The ships still cannot pass. The savings accounts of ordinary families on 3 continents are still being drained, and the glow whatever it means has not made any of that better. This is Respect B. Tell me in the comments where in the world you are watching from today.